So today we will discuss about Sjogren syndrome. So Sjogren syndrome is a chronic autoimmune inflammatory disease which involves the exocrine glands, significantly decreasing the quantity and quality of saliva and tears. So this is it. It's an autoimmune inflammatory disease and it's a chronic disorder which decreases the quantity and the quality, both quantity and quality of saliva and tears. Because this was first identified by a Swedish physician named Henrik Sjogren, so it's called as Sjogren syndrome. The spectrum of presentation of disorder is very broad, ranging from local consequence of exocrine gland dysfunction to major life-threatening systemic complications such as vasculitis and renal or lung involvement, and a 40 times greater risk of developing lymphoma. So there is a primary form and secondary form. About half of the time, this Sjogren syndrome occurs alone, and the other half it occurs in the presence of another connective tissue diseases such as, for example, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, or scleroderma. When Sjogren syndrome occurs alone, then it is called as primary form. When it occurs with another connective tissue disease, it is called as secondary Sjogren's. See the epidemiology. Sjogren's is one of the most prevalent autoimmune disorders, almost at 4 lakhs. So prevalence is 1 to 10 in per every 1,000. So 9 out of the 10 patients are women. So here you can see it's very common and the predilection is more towards the females. And it's mostly seen in between 4th to 6th decade. And the etiopathogenesis is not clearly known, but there's multiple factors and multiple theories that have been put forth, like inflammation or viral invasion, hormonal imbalance, and genetics. So we will talk about viral theory. So the viral invasion of lacrimal gland could certainly cause an autoimmune response. And how does this cause? So both T and B immune cells are present in the healthy lacrimal gland, and these react when the virus invades. And previously it was thought it was more due to the cytomegalovirus, but recently it has been shifted to Epstein-Barr virus. So the most common virus that is causing Sjogren syndrome as of now is an Epstein-Barr virus. So what happens? Once this Epstein-Barr virus invades the lacrimal acinar cells, these acinar cells begin to produce and display viral proteins. So the local lymphocytes initiate a response involving the production of inflammatory chemicals. So when these inflammatory chemicals come and act as a response to these local lymphocytes, that will lead to inflammation. Now this inflammation leads to destruction of both virus and the host cell. So the lacrimal cells are also destroyed and the virus is also destroyed. So now displayed viral proteins can mimic acinar self-proteins. As we discussed previously, there is something called molecular mimicry, where the host cells will also be presented as virus to the B and T lymphocytes. So when this displayed viral proteins can mimic acinar self-proteins, and thus inflammation induced by a virus can transform into an autoimmune process. So because the inflammation is induced by the virus, the host perceives that the lacrimal cells are also a virus and they produce antibodies against them. So this is called molecular mimicry, and this is displayed here. So the host cells is also destroyed, and this is one of the autoimmune process. And the acinar cell theory. So Mirshaf and others have proposed a theory that suggests that under the acinar cells stimulate T cells under stress. The acinar cells produce T cells within the gland to initiate autoimmune inflammatory cascade by duplicating themselves and stimulating B cells. The change in the function of acinar cells is likely a result of prolonged low-grade inflammation that creates a cytokine environment that encourages the acinar cells to behave like antigen-presenting cells. So it's the same here, but under the stress, what happens is it keeps on producing the prolonged low-grade inflammation. It keeps on producing T cells and B cells, and this lead to antigen-presenting cells, and this leads to inflammation. So this theory is based on the observation that salivary gland epithelial cells of most Sjogren syndrome patients display major histocompatibility class 2 molecules. We have two major histocompatibilities, class 1 and class 2. class 1 is acted by T8 cells, and whereas the class 2 is acted upon by T4 cells. So here you can see the production of the T cells and antigen presenting cells, which with the help of MHC2 and leads to an inflammation cascade. There is something called thymus theory. The failure of the thymus to eliminate T cells that have potential self-reactivity. Normally, thymus helps in the destruction of the T cells after the T cells are produced and its function is done. This thymus helps in the destruction of the T cells that are present in the body, which are no longer required. But when this thymus fails to eliminate these T cells, there will be an auto-reactivity or self-reactivity. Thymus function is to elimination of such auto-stimulated T cells through negative selection. So, the T cells which are not required in the body are being eliminated by thymus. And when this thymus fails to function, then you will be seeing a self-reactivity. Numerous signals such as FAS ligand, BAX and BCL2 determine. So these are the signals which normally happen in the apoptosis. So when the FAS ligand, BAX or BCL2, then these signals are gone, then the potentially self-destructive T cells are released into the periphery or undergo apoptosis. So these are normally normal phenomenon in apoptosis, and these signals act more, leading to more apoptosis and self-destruction of the cell because of the failure of the thymus to eliminate the T cells, auto-stimulated T cells, most important. So this selection process appears to be disturbed in autoimmune disease. So we had viral theory, Asnar cell theory, thymus theory, and now the hormonal influence. A healthy lacrimal gland requires a balance of hormonal stimuli to maintain its form and function. Female patients present with dry eye symptoms in certain hormonal states, including lactation, pregnancy, postmenopause, under the influence of OCP, oral contraceptive pills, supplemental estrogen use, and premature ovarian failure. One proposed common theory is that low testosterone bioavailability. So, the androgen stimulation of Asnar cells who has specific receptor activation has a significant influence on protein synthesis in these cells. As such, because of the androgen deficiency, may result in inability of Asnar cells to produce and secrete their contents. As you can see here, the androgen stimulation, because the production of the androgen, you can see protein synthesis in these cells. When there is an androgen deficiency due to some or other cause, then there could be inability to produce the Asnar cells and secrete their contents. So androgen cell levels are decreased in both systemic lupus erythematosus and Sjogren's syndrome. Prolactin. How does prolactin has shown to be influence TR function at a clinical level? Is that increased levels of prolactin in women were found to be associated with several measures of reduced TR fluid production. And the rabbit studies have shown that increased levels of prolactin, which occur in pregnancy and lactation, causes the lacrimal gland to undergo both immunoarchitectural changes and functional changes. So this is one of the reasons which hasn't been proved mostly in the humans, but that could be one of the reasons the prolactin increased in the pregnancy and the lactation period leads to decreased production in this lacrimal glands. And then there is critical level of hormonal support required for the lacrimal gland to remain healthy and free of autoimmune disease. Androgen support and a normal level of prolactin appear to be the most critical hormones of the lacrimal gland function. So if you can see here, though there are so many hormones in the body, the androgen and the prolactin are the most important one. And the deficiency in the androgen or the increase of prolactin can lead to decreased production in the lacrimal glands. And the next is genetic influence. The familial clusterings of different autoimmune diseases have been reported. So it has been noted that 30 to 35% of the patients have relatives with other autoimmune diseases. So the other autoimmune diseases also have an influence on the Sjogren's syndrome. So genetic studies have suggested that there may be a cluster of major histocompatibility complex genes that can influence the propensity of autoimmune disease. As we were discussing previously, MHC2 molecules are the one which are leading to the autoimmune reactivity. So due to the other autoimmune diseases, there would be production of more MHC cells, and this leads to the autoimmunity, leading to lacrimal gland destruction and Sjogren's syndrome. So, the previously we spoke about apoptosis irregularities have been suggested to be a part of Sjogren's syndrome pathophysiology, and therefore these studies have undertaken to look at the apoptotic genes. Mutations in these genes have been implicated in human disease. Of particular interest, FAST genes, a mutation in this gene has been identified as a contributor to autoimmune lymphoproliferative syndrome. As we were discussing previously, in the thymus theory, when there is a genetic, so this is the one that acts there also, when there is a genetic influence and there is particularly these genes, the FAST genes, and there's a mutation in this gene, normally if there is a mutation and this keeps on acting, then there will be more apoptosis, leading to more destruction of the cells. So mostly the contributor to autoimmune lymphoproliferative syndrome. So how does the patients present? They present with xerostomia, which is a dry mouth. This, because of the dryness, it leads to candidal infections, dental caries and decay, and the salivary glands will be swollen. And the dysphagia, that is difficulty or soreness when eating or speaking, and the notice that the taste is affected because we need saliva to eat, and we need to keep it moist when we talk. Because there is a dryness due to the loss of the cells, then there will be a difficulty in eating or speaking. Odonophagia, that is difficulty in swallowing, and the frequent sips of water is often required. And there is hoarseness of voice, and there is something called keratoconjunctivitis sicca, that is feeling of irritable or gritty eyes. That is due to the dryness of the eye, decreased production of the tear. So there will be dryness leading to irritable or gritty eyes. And now because the tear production is not there and the eyes are not moist, there will be recurrent eye infections and the dry skin and dry vaginal dryness, which leads to painful or difficult sexual intercourse. So these were glandular manifestations. I'll repeat it again. Xerostomia, one of the important, and the dysphagia, odonophagia, keratoconjunctivitis sicca, and dry skin. These are the important ones you should remember. And the complications of xerostomia is candidal infections, dental caries, and also leads to dysphagia and odonophagia. And there's something called keratoconjunctivitis sicca, that is dry eyes, which leads to feeling of irritableness or gritty eyes, and this leads to recurrent eye infections. And there is dry skin. And now if we come to extraglandular manifestations, the systemic manifestations may involve, and the musculoskeletal system. The involvement of the musculoskeletal system, you can be seeing the patients being fatigued and the arthralgia and myalgias. And whereas the involvement of vascular system, you may say Raynaud's phenomena, where we were discussing previously in SLE and other things. Raynaud's phenomena is the digital ischemia, that is peripheral ischemia in the digits when they are exposed to cold or stress. And cutaneous, purpura and dry skin, decreased capacity of sebaceous gland secretion. When the blood vessels of the extremities become inflamed, a gamma globulin purpura results and is usually present symmetrically in both the lower extremities. So here you can see this point. It is symmetrically present in both the lower extremities when the blood vessels of the extremities become inflamed, and this is secondary due to production of hyper gamma globulins. This leads to purpura. So it is assumed that immune complexes become trapped at the bifurcation of small blood vessels, leading to complement activation. So the musculoskeletal involvement, the vascular involvement, and the pulmonary involvement, that is lungs, that is interstitial. Here we can see this is under the vascular involvement, the cutaneous and all. Next we can see here the pulmonary involvement, where you can be seeing interstitial lung disease, that is due to long standing, and lymphoid interstitial pneumonitis, that is desiccation of tracheobronchial tree, is a common respiratory manifestation that is also a result of diminished secretions of local mucus gland. Because of the local mucus glands being destroyed, there could be a desiccation of the tracheobronchial tree due to the dryness. The dryness of the trachea manifests itself with a cough, that may be mild or strong. So Jogren himself described this phenomena and labeled it as bronchitis sicca. This is a very important point. What is bronchitis sicca? This is due to the dryness of the trachea. The patient presents with cough that may be mild or strong. So in a patient of Jogren syndrome presenting with cough, it is called as bronchitis sicca. And the neurological manifestations is peripheral neuropathy and the lymphoproliferation leading to lymphoma. So one of the important reasons in identifying Jogren syndrome patient is that increased risk for lymphoma, which usually presents as marginal zone B cell lymphoma of the mucosa associated lymphoid tissue, that is MALT, which is a form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The non-Hodgkin's lymphoma that you should have studied in pathology and all, there is a variant that is MALT, that is mucosa associated lymphoid tissue, and it usually presents as marginal zone B cell lymphoma of the mucosa associated lymphoid tissue. So MALT, which is a form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So the reason why the Jogren syndrome should be identified and treated is it leads to lymphoproliferation, that is lymphoma presentation. And the renal manifestations. The renal manifestations are interstitial nephritis. So the tubulointerstitial nephritis is a specific tubular epitheliitis that is found most often in younger patients and is characterized by indolent subclinical course without development of renal failure. So in younger patients, you won't be seeing any clinical symptoms or signs in the patient, but underlying the disease will keep on destroying the nephrons. So interstitial nephritis is seen in the young patients, but the signs and symptoms are very less. The clinical course seen is very less. In contrast, whereas a glomerular nephritis, which is a severe manifestation that is associated with cryoglobulinemia and hypocomplementemia, that appears late in the course of the Jogren syndrome and is associated with higher morbidity and mortality. So here you can see there are two things mainly, that is tubulointerstitial nephritis that occurs mostly in younger patients, whereas the glomerulonephritis, which occurs in the older patients, which has more morbidity and mortality. And the hematological leukopenia, which is defined as the white blood cells count less than 4,000, was present in 20% of the Jogren syndrome. Previous reports have noted that leukopenia could be around 6 to 33%. The mechanism is not clearly mentioned, but it could be due to the destruction. But it could be due to the immune destruction of leukocytes, splenic sequestration, abnormal bone marrow maturation, or an accumulation of white blood cells in the organs of inflammation. Here you can see the exact mechanism is not been understood by anyone, but it could be one of the reasons due to the destruction of leukocytes, splenic sequestration, abnormal bone marrow maturation, and an accumulation of white blood cells in the organs of inflammation. And the gastrointestinal are, it's an acid reflux, we call it GARD. The gastric mucosa of this symptomatic patient looks atrophic. Biopsies can reveal cellular infiltrates that consists of mainly T lymphocytes and thus reminiscent of salivary and lacrimal gland infiltrates. So it will be same, the T cell infiltrates will be seen in these cells also, and which can be shown on biopsies. And the maternity, the patients with Jogren syndrome have a history of miscarriages and have a higher frequency of fetal complications of congenital heart block that relates to transplacental passage of autoantibodies to anti-Rho and anti-La. In some patients, recurrent miscarriages and vascular thrombosis as a result of antiphospholipid antibodies. So, pregnancy with Jogren syndrome, patients have more chances of miscarriages. The fetus has more chances of congenital heart blocks. This is due to the transplacental passage of autoantibodies, that is anti-Rho and anti-La. So here you can see the musculoskeletal, the vascular, the pulmonary, that is interstitial lung disease, the neurological, it's peripheral neuropathy, the lymphoma, which is most important, the renal, it's both tubulointerstitial nephritis and glomerulonephritis, And the hematological, it's leukopenia. The gastrointestinal, it's mostly acid reflux, but the maternity is very important. It leads to miscarriages, that is abortions, and fetal complications, that are congenital heart blocks, and that is due to transplacental passage of autoantibodies. So there is a criteria, that is American European combined criteria. So in this, at least one of the following of the eye symptoms, that is symptomatic dry eyes for at least 3 months, or repeated sensation of foreign bodies in the eyes, or artificial tears required at least 3 times a day. Either one of these should be present in the patient. And the mouth symptoms, that is oral symptoms, this is symptomatic dry mouth for at least 3 months, same as the eyes, and recurrent salivary gland enlargement. This is one thing you should remember here, recurrent salivary gland enlargement, and the requirement of frequent drinking while swallowing of dry food. And the positive eye signs, that is Schirmer test, where you get less than 5 mm for 5 minutes, or positive Rose Bengal test. And the positive salivary gland biopsy in histology, at least one lymphoid follicle, that is more than 50 cells, under 4 millimeter square tissue. So we'll be discussing about Schirmer test in following slides. Salivary gland involvement, at least one of the following, that is positive scintigraphy, or positive parotid sclerography, or unsimulated of salivary flow, that is less than 1.5 ml for 15 minutes. And presence of antibodies, that is anti-Rho or anti-La antibody, and anti-nuclear antibody, or rheumatoid factors, is any of one. So there's an eye symptoms and oral symptoms, positive eye sign, that is with Schirmer test, which is less than 5 mm. Normally, you'll be seeing more than 5 mm due to the production of the tears. And the next is positive salivary gland biopsy and salivary gland involvement and autoantibodies. So the definitive diagnosis requires at least 4 criteria. And in the absence of other autoimmune disease, the diagnosis is primary Sjogren's syndrome. So at least out of the 6, we need 4 criteria. And in the absence of other autoimmune disease, this diagnosis primary Sjogren's. And the exclusion criteria. So the past neck and head radiation treatment, hepatitis C infection or AIDS, or pre-existing lymphoma or sarcoidosis, graft versus host disease, or use of anticholinergic drugs. So this leads to again dryness, the anticholinergic drugs. So, or graft versus host disease, which is which leads to destruction of the cells, and the pre-existing lymphoma or sarcoidosis, hepatitis C infection, and past neck or head radiation treatment or AIDS. So the Schirmer test here you can see, this will be kept in the eye, which will be with denomination of 1 to 10 millimeter, and normally we will be seeing around 7 to 8 millimeter due to the production of the tears in the 5 minutes. But in Sjogren's syndrome, because the production of tears is not there, it will be less than 5 mm. And this is Rose Bengal test. You can see the spotting. This is due to the loss of tear film. You can see this thing. This is keratoconjunctivitis sicca. This is similar, the same thing here. Normally, if there is tears, this will be the dye will be washed out. But here, because no production of the tears, you can be seeing it, the spotting everywhere. And this is a severe xerostomia, the indurations on the tongue with a dry tongue. And here you can see the diffuse enlargement of the glands, the salivary glands on the both sides. And here you can see in the patients, both the cheeks on the both sides is swelled. That is due to the enlargement of the parotid glands. Here, these are the parotid glands. You can see my marker here. Is it visible? Anyone there? Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, fine. So these are the salivary glands, so which is seen on the MRI. So I'll show this again. The Schirmer test, normally to see the production of the tears, we use this. We keep this in the eyes and wait for 5 minutes, and we'll see the up to which level it's been seen, and it's mostly between 7 to 8 mm. And this is Rose Bengal test to see the keratoconjunctivitis sicca. And this is xerostomia. This is diffuse enlargement of the salivary glands, and this is the MRI where the parotid glands on the both sides are enlarged. So the investigations, you can see anti-nuclear antibody or group of antibodies. So in this rheumatoid factor, this indicative of most often preformed for the diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis, but is also positive in Sjogren's syndrome. But the most important is we should anti-Rho and anti-La. That is anti-Rho, that is yes, Sjogren's syndrome A is present 40% patients, and the remaining is for the anti-La. And the erythrocyte sedimentation rate, this test measures inflammation, and elevated ESR indicates the presence of inflammatory disorder. This is not only in these autoimmune disorders, but any inflammation leads to increased ESR in the body. And the immunoglobulins, these are normal blood proteins that participate in immune reactions and are usually elevated in Sjogren's syndrome. So here you can see, though the anti-Rho and anti-La are one of the specific for Sjogren's syndrome, 70% of the patients have positive for anti-Rho and 40 for anti-La. It doesn't mean that every patient will be having this positive. So the patient may be having rheumatoid factor positive or immunoglobulins and anti-Rho and anti-La. Here you can see the anti-nuclear antibodies. Anti-Rho is up to 70%, whereas anti-La is up to 50%. And the rheumatoid factor can be seen up to 90%. So the concurrent presence of both rheumatoid arthritis and Sjogren's syndrome can also be seen. So eyes test, the Scrimmer test, as I was showing before, the measures tear production. The Rose Bengal test, eye drops containing dye that an eye care specialist uses to examine the surface of the eye for dry spots. You can see normally there won't be dry spots in the eye. Because the dry spots are there, the Rose Bengal staining will be done. And the Scrimmer test we saw previously. And the dental test, salivary flow, measures the amount of saliva produced over a certain period of time. You will usually ask to spit as much as saliva as you can into a cup over a 5-minute period. The amount of saliva is then weighed or measured, but an unusually low flow rate can indicate Sjogren's syndrome. So the amount of saliva split is measured and checked, and if it's less, then very low. That when it's very low, unusually low, then it can indicate Sjogren's syndrome. Salivary scintigraphy and nuclear medicine test that measures salivary gland production. And the salivary gland biopsy confirms inflammatory cell infiltration of the salivary glands. And the positive biopsy defined as at least one focus of dense inflammatory infiltrate containing at least 50 lymphocytes per 4 millimeter. There is one thing you should remember for the future exams and all. A positive biopsy is defined as at least one focus of dense inflammatory infiltrate containing at least 50 lymphocytes per 4 mm. So, as we were discussing, Scrimmer test of less than 5 mm and this of 50 lymphocytes per 4 mm, more than 50 lymphocytes. And this is something we discussed previously, allergic conjunctivitis. So what could be the cause of dry eyes? So the differential diagnosis should also be made, because not every dry eye is an Sjogren's syndrome. So allergic conjunctivitis or blepharitis, or the environment due to the prolonged exposure to low humidity, dust or sun, or lifestyle where there is diminished blinking due to long periods of reading, driving or computer use, or the medications such as some diuretics or anticholinergic medications, including treatment for Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, can also lead to the dry eyes. And rosacea, ocular symptoms of itchy, burning dry eyes with eyelid swelling and erythema, occurs in 50% of the patients with rosacea. So, all these are differential diagnoses for dry eyes. For the dry mouth, you will be seeing, for the dry mouth, you will be seeing diabetes where there could be dryness that worsens with poor glycemic control, and the head and neck irradiation. So that's why we are keeping in exclusion criteria. If you can see the head and neck irradiation and these medications where anticholinergic medications have been kept in the exclusion criteria in while diagnosing the Sjogren's syndrome. And the hepatitis C and HIV infections, because in hepatitis C we will be seeing salidinitis that results in dry mouth in 15% of the persons. And in HIV infections, you will be seeing HIV-related gland disease exhibits clinical manifestation that are similar to Sjogren's syndrome. And the medications, that is diuretics and anticholinergic medications we discussed previously. And the obstructed nasal passages that leads to dryness caused by mouth breathing. And the sarcoidosis, decreased salivary flow results from non-caseating granulomas in the salivary glands. So for the dry mouth, it is diabetes, head and neck radiation, hepatitis C, HIV infections, medication, obstructed nasal passages, and sarcoidosis. And the treatment, there is no known cure for Sjogren's syndrome, and the treatment focuses on relieving the symptoms and preventing complications. And the treatment can be grouped into regimens for keratoconjunctivitis sicca, xerostomia, and systemic manifestations. So the eye care. So for the keratoconjunctivitis, for the eye care, we can use the artificial tears in the mild to moderate cases where the dry eyes can be usually or successfully treated with just eye drops. We can use artificial tears, which mimics the tears. It's a liquid that mimics the tears, and this is available anywhere, and we don't need any prescription. So this can be easy. And there are many different types of eye drops that can be used. But the best is the short-term dose of eye drops containing corticosteroids may be recommended if your eyes become irritated. However, long-term corticosteroid use isn't recommended because they can cause serious side effects. So to minimize the chance of experiencing side effects from corticosteroids, there is lowest effective dose or shortest possible time. So though artificial tears are given at first, and if this doesn't work, then corticosteroids are started, and it's better not to use the corticosteroids for the long duration because it will cause serious side effects. So mostly low dose or for the short time it's been given. Or they can use something called moist chamber spectacles. Wearing glasses reduces tear evaporation by up to 30%. And this effect can be maximized by wearing specifically made glasses called specifically made glasses called moisture chamber spectacles. These wrap around the eyes like goggles and help retain moisture and protect the eyes from the irritants, where it's completely closed on all the sides so that the evaporation of tears will be decreased and it will give a moist feeling inside, so the dryness of the eyes will decrease. Some people used to be embarrassed wear them, but modern designs look good. The old would were mostly due to the black color, and it used to be the persons using after the eye surgeries. So these glasses were being given previously, and the newer glasses have been made. And the punctual plugs, punctual occlusion is widely used technique that seals the tear ducts, normally into the which the tear flows again, with the small plugs. These should keep the eye better and protected by tears. Temporary plugs made of silicone and usually used first to see if they help. If it does, more permanent plugs can be used. So the artificial tears, moist chamber spectacles, the punctual plugs. And in the drugs, the corticosteroids, eye drops can be given. And for the mouth care, numerous techniques have been done that including the good oral hygiene to prevent tooth decay and gum disease, increasing your fluid intake, sugar-free chewing gums to stimulate saliva production, ice cubes can be sucked in to help lubricate your mouth, and regularly using mouth rinses to soothe your mouth and protect it against infection. And if someone is smoking, they should be stop smoking because smoking irritates the mouth and increases the rate at which saliva evaporates. And saliva substitutes, there are numerous number of saliva substitutes products that can lubricate your mouth. However, they don't replicate the role of saliva in preventing infection. So you still have to maintain good oral hygiene. And saliva substitutes are available as spray, gel, or gum. In the medications, pilocarpine can be given. It's often used to treat the symptoms of dry eyes and dry mouth, but the side effects are very much high, and which includes excessive sweating, nausea, diarrhea, heartburn, abdominal pain, increased need to go to the toilet because increased frequency of urination, and for some people side effects are mild, but for some it may be more. So, in whom the pilocarpine should not be given is important. That is in asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, and if you are pregnant or breastfeeding. So, the pilocarpine is oftenly used for the symptoms of dry eyes and dry mouth, but there are some side effects, and it is contraindicated in patients with asthma, COPD, pregnant or breastfeeding females. The hydroxychloroquine has shown to decrease the immune system attacks on the tear and salivary glands. It doesn't directly act on the glands, but it decreases the immune system's activation on the glands. So, in a way, it acts the decrease the destruction of the glands. So, it can also help you reduce any associated symptoms such as muscle pain, joint pains, and stiffness, as we were discussed in any other autoimmune disorders such as rheumatoid arthritis or SLE. The hydroxychloroquine can be given because it reduces the immune attack. That is, means it reduces the inflammation. So, hydroxychloroquine should be taken for several weeks before you notice any improvements, and it could be around 6 months in some patients. The side effects include nausea, skin rash, loss of appetite, stomach cramps, and vomitings. In very rare cases, hydroxychloroquine can damage the retina, affecting the vision, and it should be avoided in breastfeeding women. So, in the side effects, the important one you should remember is damage of the retina, which is very rare, but one of the morbidity causes. So, it's very important. So, the hydroxychloroquine should be taken for long terms to see the any improvement. And then the treatment of other disorders of the syndrome. The dry skin can be treated with several soaps, creams, and the vaginal dryness it can be treated with hormonal replacement therapy or estrogen creams. And the muscle and joint pains. So, in the muscle and joint pains, the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs can be given, but the risk of developing stomach ulcers and internal bleeding is more when you use the NSAIDs. So, the NSAIDs should be used with the on only on the doctor's advice, and it should not be used every time. And NSAIDs aren't recommended for pregnant or breastfeeding women or for people with pre-existing risk factors for cardiovascular or kidney conditions, because the NSAIDs mostly results in renal failures and increased risk of myocardial infarction. So, it should not be used in patients with cardiovascular and renal conditions, and it should be avoided completely in patients in females who are pregnant and breastfeeding. So, the most important thing is the simple tips that can prevent the problems with Sjogren's syndrome. Have a dental checkup every 6 months. Practice good dental hygiene like brushing, flossing, and using mouthwash regularly. Avoid eating too many sweet foods. Avoid strong perfume soaps. Use special creams and soaps, and avoid the dry environments, and avoid smoking and alcohol. And the prognosis, the most serious complication associated with Sjogren's syndrome is the development of lymphoproliferative disease, that is primarily non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Multiple studies have shown an increase in risk of lymphoproliferative disease, but no increase in all cause of mortality. And whereas with primary Sjogren's syndrome, other rheumatological disease including lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, scleroderma has been associated with increased mortality. That is in secondary Sjogren's. When there is presence of other autoimmune disease, there is increased mortality rates. And the risk of lymphoma in patients with primary Sjogren's is 40 times that of the general population. And the multiple studies have shown that low levels of complement protein, that is C3 or C4, at the time of diagnosis is associated with higher rate of lymphoproliferative disease and higher mortality rate. Although there is no evidence to support for screening guidelines for lymphoproliferative disease in patients with Sjogren's syndrome, the following features should raise physicians' index for suspicion: enlarged parotid glands, regional or general lymphadenopathy, hepatosplenomegaly, pulmonary infiltrates, vasculitis, and hypergammaglobulinemia. Because lymphoma, which is one of the most common cause of mortality in the patients with Sjogren's syndrome, any patient with these features, that is enlarged parotid glands, regional or general lymphadenopathy, hepatosplenomegaly, pulmonary infiltrates, or hypergammaglobulinemia, should be checked for the lymphoma and should be kept on the follow-up. So I'll just give you a few important points and I'll finish it off. So Sjogren syndrome is a chronic autoimmune disorder, inflammatory disorder, which involves the exocrine glands and significantly decreases the quantity and quality of the saliva and tears. So the important point here, exocrine glands, and these primary and secondary forms. When it is associated with another connective tissue disorder, it's called secondary. And there are few theories put forth. That is viral theory, and the important virus that you should remember is Epstein-Barr virus. And there is something called Ashnar cell theory, where the T cells are produced, and thymus theory, where is the decreased function or the failure of the thymus to function to eliminate the T cells, or the hormonal influence, where the two most important hormones is androgen and prolactin. Decreased androgen or increased prolactin can lead to the decreased production of that the exocrine glands, and there's a genetic influence due to the MHC2 molecules and the mutations in the fast genes, which leads to decreased apoptosis and increased production of increased apoptosis and decreased saliva and tear production due to the destruction of the cells. And the most important clinical presentations is xerostomia, and this leads to dry mouth, which leads to dental caries and dysphagia and odonophagia, and the keratoconjunctivitis sicca, and dry skin. And extraglandular manifestations are musculoskeletal, vascular, where Raynaud's phenomena is an important thing. And there could be purpura in both the lower limbs in the symmetrically. Or lungs, it's interstitial lung disease. And neurologically, it's peripheral neuropathy. And in lymphoproliferation, it's a lymphoma, which is very important. The lymphoma, because it has more mortality, and the Sjogren's patients have marginal zone B cell lymphoma of the mucosa associated lymphoid tissue, that is MALT, a form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. This is an important point, and I should remember this thing. And there is renal involvement, where the mortality is more in the older patients due to glomerulonephritis, whereas the younger patients there is tubulointerstitial nephritis, but the subclinical course is indolent. And hematologically, you see leukopenia. And the gastrointestinal, there is an acid reflux. And the maternity, there is miscarriages and there is congenital heart blocks in the fetus. That is due to the transplacental passage of autoantibodies to Rho and LAR. So two important points. And the miscarriages can be due to a result of antiphospholipid antibodies. And the criteria, we have eye symptoms, oral symptoms, positive eye signs, positive salivary gland biopsy, salivary gland involvement, and autoantibodies. So we need at least 4 criteria has to be present to have a definitive diagnosis. And in the absence of other autoimmune disease, the diagnosis is primary Sjogren syndrome. And the exclusion criteria, we have excluded with the patients with radiation, previous radiation, hepatitis C infection, HIV, previous existing lymphoma, graft versus host disease, or use of anticholinergic drugs. The scrimatous, here you can see the film is kept in the eye and you are checked, and if it's less than 5 mm, then you can suspect the Sjogren syndrome or dry eyes. And there is something called keratoconjunctivitis sicca, that is rose Bengal test, because when the dry eyes are there, there will be deposition of the dye in the dry spots. Here you can see once again. And the severe xerostomia with dry tongue. And the Sjogren syndrome, that is salivary gland enlargement. And here you can see MRI, the both parotid glands being enlarged. And the antibodies, the rheumatoid factor, which is present in 70 to 90% of the patients, and presence of concomitant rheumatoid arthritis can also lead to presence of rheumatoid factor. Anti-Ro and anti-La, anti-Ro which is present in 70% of the patients, whereas anti-La which is present in 40% of the patients. And the ESR is increased, and immunoglobulins that participate are also seen. And the test we discussed previously in those images, Scrima test, Lowe's Bengal test, and the salivary flow, the saliva is measured and weighed over a period of 5 minutes. In the salivary scintigraphy, a nuclear medicine type, where the dye is sent in and salivary gland function is seen, and the salivary gland biopsy. And the important point here is it containing at least 50 lymphocytes per 4 millimeter. A biopsy where one focus of dense inflammatory infiltrate containing at least 50 lymphocytes per 4 millimeter. And the differential diagnosis for eyes or allergic conjunctivitis. The important is the medications and the rosacea and allergic conjunctivitis. And in medications, the diuretics and anticholinergic drugs, which include the treatment of Parkinsonism disease and Alzheimer's. Dry mouth, it is as the exclusion criteria. So remembering these or exclusion criteria will help. The treatment, there is no specific cure, and artificial tears, corticosteroids, moisture chamber spectacles, and punctual plugs for the eye care. And good hygiene, taking care of good oral hygiene and eating sugar-free chewing gums or decreasing the smoking and alcohol use will help in the good mouth care. Though saliva substitutes are present, they won't help in um, replicating the preventive infections of the saliva. The medication pilocarpine is given, but the side effects will lead to increased sweating and diarrhea, and they should be not be given contraindicated in patients with asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or females who are pregnant or breastfeed. The same goes with hydroxychloroquine. This though they don't act directly on the cells, they act on decreasing the inflammation or the immune system by decreasing inflammation, and the retina and attacks on the retina affecting the vision. So it's an important point, though it's a very race, hydroxychloroquine can damage retina and it should not be given in breastfeeding women. And for the treating these other symptoms, the dry skin, the creams are used for the vaginal dryness, the estrogen creams or hormone replacement therapy, and for the joint pains, NSAIDs, and NSAIDs should also be not be given in females with pregnant or breastfeeding and cardiovascular kidney problems. And the most serious complication associated with Sjogren's syndrome is the development of lymphoproliferative disease, the primary non-Hodgkin lymphoma. So the lymphoma, the patient should be kept on follow-up and should be looked for the enlarged parotid glands, regional or general lymphadenopathy, hepatosplenomegaly, pulmonary infiltrates, vasculitis, and hypergammaglobulinemia. So I think this should be enough, and thank you, and we'll meet in the next class.